Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. 6 years ago, in 2014, I had a career shaping moment, and this came in the context of caring for a small baby and his family. And I'd like to share with you his story and the impact which it had on me. So, this baby was 8 weeks old at the time, and he was temporarily living in the area near where we work, and when he became unwell and presented to the emergency department. Now, this baby was the son of a traveling family, and that's a community that we have in the United Kingdom who typically lead a nomadic lifestyle. When he became unwell, he came to hospital, was subsequently diagnosed with a urinary tract infection and admitted to our short stay unit to have intravenous antibiotics. And thankfully, he made a remarkable response, but because of his age, needed to continue with intravenous antibiotics. So he was transferred to the services of our new hospital at home service and cared for by our amazing team of nurses. Now, at that time, home for this little baby was a local fairground where he was living with his community and his family. That's where they were temporarily living and working. So our fabulous nurses got to go and visit this baby 3 times a day at this fairground, administering his treatment, as well as performing some opportunistic public health information sharing with him and his community. He continued to make a great recovery and was soon back to health, and they didn't need to treat him anymore. Now, his family was so grateful for this treatment that they received. They were really thankful that their baby got excellent care. They were really thankful that they were able to get back to their home, and also that they were back at work and living within the heart of their community. So as a token of their deep appreciation to the hospital at home nurses, the nurses got a day of free rides as the fairground and thoroughly enjoyed themselves with this baby and his family. Now, when I think of this baby and his family, there's a lot of things that strike me about that episode of care. Here in the United Kingdom, we frequently refer to the travelling community as hard to reach or inaccessible to healthcare. And yet, this baby and his family had a diametrically opposed experience. It caused me to think about what we talk about when we consider patient-centered care. And usually what we mean is that we put a patient and their family at the heart of our really rigid systems of care, with the expectation that they're going to conform. And it made me think, what would it look like if we put the patient and their family at the centre, and we put very flexible boundaries around what we deliver in terms of healthcare, and perhaps sometimes bend our rules where the rules aren't serving them. This baby's experience with his family has stayed with me since then, and it's something that I have considered when it comes to developing pathways and thinking of guidelines and thinking of how we can really make healthcare suit the needs of children and families, whatever their circumstances. Because surely if we can create something that meets the need of those that we refer to as hard to reach, then that's the best situation for absolutely everybody. When I come to think of this situation, I think of it in 3 overarching themes of the people, perspective, and the place. So I'd like to go on to share with you the framework that I have used since then when considering designing healthcare and pathways for children and young people. When I consider people, children and young people are the heart of what we do, and involving them and having truly collaborative, creative relationships with them in shaping everything that we do is essential. Here in the UK, we're really privileged with an example of excellence in this regard with our Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health and their and us network, which is the Children and Young People Engagement Network. They really rest at the heart of everything that the college does. That ranges from putting them front and centre at the annual conference every year where they have the opening stage, to them creating research charters, to them sitting on interview panels for when the chief executive of the college was appointed, which is truly remarkable. And I wonder whether I would have been successfully appointed in my job if I'd had a child and young person on the panel there, but surely that's something we need to aspire towards. I've recently been reading about the Buurtzorg organization in the Netherlands, where they have a really pure form of this patient engagement and involvement. One of their underlying tenets is this principle of no conversation without me. about me without me. So they do not have any conversations about their clients without the clients being present. And that really challenged me to think of what I do in my practice. What would all of our multidisciplinary team meetings look like if our patients were present? How would the conversation change? Would we be more compassionate? Would we be more empathetic? It's really challenged me, and it's something that I seek to utilize in clinical treatment going forwards. Moving on to just have some thoughts about perspective. When you can turn yourself and put yourself in patients' shoes, it really does completely transform how you deliver healthcare. I think for any healthcare professional here who's had to be on the other side and be a patient, those experiences that you have being on the other side shape you and transform your clinical practice in ways that no other lesson can be learned. And that's certainly been the case for me in my experiences as a patient. But it's also important for us to consider, particularly for those of us working in diverse areas with diverse populations, what it is to actually step in their shoes, to turn around and consider what their perspective looks like. If we think of something as common as asthma, in a lot of South Asian languages, there is no word for asthma. And when we consider that, how does that impact on how you do a consultation for asthma in the paediatric emergency department? How does that impact on the asthma action plan and follow-up for a child so that they can have good healthcare outcomes? Also, in a lot of areas of the world, there is no system of primary care. And yet here in the UK, certainly that is the heart of our healthcare system. What does your healthcare seeking behaviour look like if you are not accustomed to being somewhere where there is primary care? Having all of these thoughts and embedding them into our practice really are going to be the way that we shape and make clinical services which will eventually start to erode and destroy the marked disparities and inequalities in access to healthcare and healthcare outcomes which we see. And then lastly, when we consider place, the place that I consider is home. Throughout my clinical practice, there's two questions that families constantly ask. The first is usually, what's wrong with my child? And once they've established that, the next question typically is, when can we go home? I think across the board, given the choice between a hospital bed and their own bed at home, children and families will always opt for their own bed at home. So essentially, as healthcare professionals, what we're doing is accompanying them on this journey to make sure that they get well so that they can safely get back to their place that they call home. And this is something that I have thought of deeply in terms of shaping services and bringing us back to the conversation starting at the beginning. The ultimate example of that is acute clinical care, which is delivered within the home. Takes us back to the baby who had his care at home. And it's been delightful to see over the years a global spread of acute hospital at home services with amazing examples everywhere from Malaysia to Melbourne. And particularly during this time of the pandemic, when coming to hospital has been not only a source of stress for families, but actually a source of deep abiding fear. It has been great to see families that we can care for using hospital at home services and allay that anxiety as they return to health. And overall, it really comes down to that old saying, it truly is, there's no place like home. Thank you.